So apologies, this may be a kind of old controversy. A few months ago, a YouTuber, Gary, over at Nerdrotic, got into a public spat with Simu, the star of Shang-Chi. And long story short, Shang-Chi won because Gary was complaining that it's gonna flop, it's woke, it's got too many women, blah, blah, blah. But the film has made a lot of money. So he keeps trying to open up the thing again and saying, no, it lost money. The film did not lose money. He's saying, oh, the Disney stock is declining, it lost money. It didn't lose any money. So we're going to see essentially him and Turf Nation square off. Turf covers a couple of different topics, but I want to focus on Shang-Chi. We'll get to Hawkeye because he did a very bad video on Hawkeye. But Turf doesn't cover Hawkeye, so I'm going to cover what he covers. But I do like Turf's videos, but I think he made a good minor point, but I think he missed the larger point. Gary is still wrong, but I think we want to criticize him fairly. Essentially, Gary is going to try to mock that Shang-Chi has a good story and his reasoning. I'm going to agree with partly, but he's being very deceptive and lying to his audience.
We beat up all the men.
Turns out this fight club is run by Shang-Chi's sister. Oh, and it gets so much better. They turned the MCU up to 11. Remember when I said Shang-Chi was trained by the Mandarin and Death Dealer and the best of the best the Ten Rings organization had to offer, and they wouldn't train his sister? That's okay. She trained herself in the shadows, a superhuman form of Kung Fu that is far superior to Shang-Chi's. She actually fights him in this fight club and beats him, and of course, kicks him in the balls.
It's actually hilarious how upset these people get over women being good at fighting in newer movies. And I say newer movies because back in the beginning of the MCU, no one cared that Black Widow was a badass and beat up tons of men because she wore a tight suit. But then of course she became woke. Also, he fully just doesn't understand the movie. He omits the fact that Shang-Chi wasn't trying to win against his sister but was rather trying to talk her down. Now of course admitting this would go against his argument that the sister is just powerful because of me, she, you, which is something he loves to mention, whatever the fuck that means.
In the story, yes, Shang-Chi has a sister. The sister is very skilled in martial arts. It appears he's being humiliated. That's not what's going on. He just wants more information. So they're not really fighting to the death. But Gary makes it seem like all Shang-Chi is doing is humiliating male characters over and over again because of Kevin Feige's radical feminist agenda. Now, if he honestly thinks Feige's a radical feminist, I think he's nuts. He's just being stupid, but I think more likely he's lying. So he's being deceptive about Shang-Chi. But does he have a point? I do agree it's a little convenient that Shu is just so skilled, and she was able to, quote, train in secret and be able to fight somebody like Shang-Chi. However, if he does have a good point with Shang-Chi, and I agree, I disagree with him, it's a bad film, but I agree that the story needs to be a lot better. But in terms of his larger point, this I think is where Turf is wrong. Now, Gary's not consistent, but his main thing is he's standing up for the canon, for the lore, for the larger mythology in comics and films. He's lying a lot, but he has a legitimate stance if he's at least being consistent. He's not, so let me point this out. And this is in reference to the Hawkeye video because he jumps back and forth between television and film in different parts of the MCU and Marvel Comics. So I'm going to do the same thing because he's not really being focused on one single universe. So if you go in the Batman books, there was a storyline where essentially Batman is overwhelmed. He's beaten by this person, Bane. His back is broken. A new Batman takes over. Our Batman, Bruce, is recuperating. He basically is able to regain the use of his legs, but he's out of practice. He thinks the new Batman has gone too far. He needs to fight him, but he's badly lost a lot of his skills from not training all the time. So he makes a deal with the devil, with Lady Shiva, who's this woman who's considered one of the best fighters in the DC universe. And they make a deal where, okay, I'm going to give you sped up training, but for a price. They make the deal, she fulfills it, and he almost nearly kills somebody. So it's a pretty good story. It's a lot better than Shang-Chi. So Gary's point that, oh, the woman has all the power. Oh, how did she learn all these skills? Oh, the MCU is like, no, it's canonical. This is a canonical story. It's called Knight's End. This was done over a lot of Batman books. So again, Gary has a point with Shang-Chi. Yes, it was done too quickly. It's a little convenient. I'd give Shang-Chi, 7 to 7.5. It's within that range. It's well done, but it's nothing special. Knight's End was much better done. It's much better written, much better plotting. It's much more believable what happens between Batman and Lady Shiva. So again, Gary has a point. There are weaknesses in Shang-Chi, but he's still lying and being deceptive. If he cared about the canon, he would have told his viewers, hey, listen, there's a better way to do this in the Batman books. He didn't do that. So either two things. Either he doesn't know the story, which again proves he's not the expert he claims to be, so he's lying to his audience, and or he does know, but he's not going to tell them about this, even though it is canonical. This is part of the Batman mythology. Now he might say, I'm just talking about Shang-Chi, and I'm just talking about it. No, he's clearly talking about him being annoyed by these women being able to fight all the time. But within these stories, this type of story has been done well. He's obligated to be truthful about this. If he's not, he is what he is. He is a grifter. So Turf makes his point. He is a grifter, but I do think Gary's correct that we want to respect the mythology and canon to some degree. He only does this selectively, though. He basically just cherry picks for his argument and for his partisan audience. He doesn't really care about the canon. But I do think the canon is important. Long story short, Shang-Chi should have just done a better job in writing the story. And if they just had read the Batman books, they would have had a really good template to do what they should have done in Shang-Chi. But Shang-Chi's fine. It's a fun action film, but it could have been a lot better. So Turf is basically correct, but I think we want to be careful and just at least try to meet the argument on its own ground in terms of the canon and mythology, at least to me. Thanks for listening.